our final episode of the season. And we're like recording the final episode. Probably this is the closest we've done to recording
Yeah,
an episode before its release.
yeah, because episode 13 is coming up in a couple of days.
Yeah.
Like publicly, it's already on the Patreon. But
Yeah.
13 out of 15, and this one is 15.
Yeah. I will also say up top, I am drinking a margarita, one that I made. My first ever margarita, classic margarita, I should say, that I've made for myself. Margaritas are strong drinks. Um, and this is strong and it's very good. So I'm feeling a little turnt. I'm feeling a little, getting a little partying a bit for the finale and for the director we're covering today. I know we'll get into it, but
Yeah.
I kind of like doing something a little bit special for the finale. I know for season one we tried to do like we had a little commentary, but then that got taken down by YouTube. I think it's still up on our Patreon. YouTube said fuck you, but I think it's kind of fun to do something a little bit different and a little bit special for our finale of the season.
And
But
last time
first,
it was Grey Gardens,
yeah, last
right?
time it was just like, oh, this is a interesting documentary. But okay, before we get into
We need to like rapid
meat,
fire media because like
um,
it's been months since we last recorded.
oh gosh, okay. I know on a previous episode this season we had talked about Blood for Dracula, because you had seen it,
Yeah.
and then we were like, oh, our Catherine, friend of the pod, Catherine tried to watch it and was like, what the fuck was this? I have now seen Flesh for Frankenstein and Blood for Dracula, and I also watched another film starring Udo Kier, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Miss Osborne, all at your recommendation, and I loved
Yeah.
all of them. I had a good time, and I
Strange Case is
do
also in my top four on Letterboxd.
I see why. Like I really enjoyed it. It's there's other films that are more like for me, I put my top 4 on Letterbox as like I want it to be since it's usually the first thing someone might see if they click on your profile. I was like I want the top 4 to represent what my tastes are as both a like consumer. Oh, I hate that word consumer.
Yeah.
And it a fan. There we go. A word I love. A fan of media and movies, and then also like my interests as a director and creator. So, which is why We're All Going to the World's Fair got bumped up to my top 4 because I was like, that's my taste. That's what I want to make, baby. And I rewatched it recently, actually, and I was like, damn, this is just as good as I remember. But
I'm very
the
like
point,
top four is too limiting to me, which is why I also have a top 13
yeah.
list.
See, that's why for what I do is I do all-time favorite tag, which I don't know if anyone ever clicks on that. I love looking at other people's tags on a movie. Like when I like find someone's review of a movie that I like, then I'll like click on a tag of that review and be like, "Ooh, what are their other like films that they've like said are in a similar vein?" And for me, like I use all-time favorites to be like another example of like what my tastes are. The point is,
Anyways,
I think one of those 3 films I feel like we're gonna have to explore in season 4.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
I I think we should do Blood for Dracula because that would get you to also talk about Butterfly.
Yeah,
But
which is very close to picture lock at the
oh,
moment. I had a meeting with
I
my thesis chair today, and I'm sure you saw the email with my notes.
which none of those things involve me.
Yeah, but like since you're also like currently doing a lot of work on it, just to like
Yeah,
keep you in the loop.
I appreciate it. I think all of the scenes that I'm working on are not. We should cut this specific part out, but like the point is, it's coming along, and I'm
We
very
haven't
excited
set
about it.
anything super specific, so I don't think.
I know, but I don't know. It feels it's very. I'm very excited for you, um,
Yeah.
and I'm learning so much working on that film. In case I haven't said before, because I don't think I have, I'm doing sound design for Butterfly, Fabiola's thesis film. And I am learning DaVinci Resolve to do that. And oh, my relationship with Adobe is slipping further and further away because I see why people rave about DaVinci Resolve. It
Mm.
is their audio setup software is fantastic. And it's literally the program is free. I'm like, oh, holy shit. Oh, other
Yeah,
things I've been
I
watching.
feel like my insights for this episode won't be super good because I've been like in kind of butterfly mode since my meeting today. So I'm like split up in various different ways.
Well, I have lots of questions that I
Yeah.
am ready to ask you. I feel
But
like
like
there's
first
so
a little
much to dig
rapid
into.
fire. We need to
Okay, okay.
I
I
like
started.
keep insisting on rapid fire.
You said rapid fire, and then I
Yeah.
started getting excited to talk about the
Yeah.
things in more detail. Well, okay, you go rapid fire. Show me how it's done.
I'm not sure like how rapid fire this rapid fire will be, but I will say I finally watched the ultimate cut of Caligula the other week. Where it's on the Canopy system. So
Hell yeah.
yay Boston Public Library.
Yay,
And
libraries.
yeah, it's so good and it's like my relationship to talking about it is weird because like it's my dream project, so I both want to like manifest it, but I also don't want to talk about it too much because I think I'll jinx it.
Mm.
But yeah,
Um,
it's the goal. And it's way better. The ultimate cut is way better than the original cut.
Speaking of pieces of media with incestuous relationships, haven't you also been watching the newest season of White Lotus?
Yes. Which yeah, it I've like mainly watching it for Parker Posey because I feel like she deserves the Jennifer Coolidge treatment. And also I love a weird family, which is and like me starting the new season of White Lotus has like kind of jumped into like me reminiscing about the Borgias, which I keep telling you to watch.
Hey, another season, future
Yeah,
season,
yeah,
episode. I've not been watching a lot of TV actually. I've been watching a lot of films. Well, there was a brief period because I moved. Actually,
yeah.
this is the first time recording, and I'm in my new apartment. That's crazy. But yeah, there was a brief like month and a half where we did not have internet. And so the only thing I could watch was my DVD things from in my DVD collection and then Scarecrow rentals. So I watched a lot of movies in the last 2 months. I'm actually
Yeah.
gonna
And in
like,
the span of our little recording hiatus, I watched Nosferatu twice.
and I watched it once with you.
Yeah,
That was one of the times you
yeah.
watched it. You've only watched it twice. I feel like you've talked about it so
I
much.
watch a lot of clips a lot of times,
Yeah.
but like fully sitting down and watching it only twice.
Oh, did I get to talk about, I can't remember when our actual last recording was. Did I talk about how for New Year's Eve
Yeah,
I got to do
yeah,
the back to back of Talented Miss Ripley and Velvet Goldmine. That was really fun. I also of like films that I watched recently that I was like, yeah, this still hits. Rewatched Assassination Nation on the day of President Trump's inauguration and had many feelings.
we recorded a lot of stuff post election.
Post election, but not
Yeah,
post inauguration.
yeah,
We're officially living in God, everything's shitty. I mean, things were shitty before. We all know that things were shitty before. We are reminded of the horrors a lot these days, but that's also how they are trying to overwhelm us, break our spirit. And there is actually there is some power in not being there's a balance to be made, I guess, between being informed and being overwhelmed. So,
Yeah.
and I'm finding my catharsis, and also like I feel like a genuine way I am like trying to contribute to my community is now that I have my own apartment, I'm doing Saffron curated film nights.
Yeah.
And I'm
I
getting my
missed
friends
the last
together.
one, but I'd
Next
like to be
time.
involved.
Yeah, I it's
And
really exciting. I have the DVD player that I bought that actually like hooks up to my laptop so I can play things in person and also I can stream things for little private screenings online, which is just so much fun and um I am absolutely like using it as a means to I'm going to try to be sharing things that are kind of hard films to find online because I have access to
yeah.
Scarecrow. And so because those are DVDs and I have a DVD player that I can then like screen record and share with folks, like I'm going to, you know, share hard to find works with people who might not get to see it otherwise. Even if it's a small group of my own friends, I think that's still a kind of community activism.
Yeah. And rest in peace, Michelle Trachtenberg.
Yeah,
That
gosh.
was crazy. That is what woke me up
Oh,
today. Cause like I was like half awake, half asleep, just like scrolling through my phone, and then I saw the news and I was like, is this real?
yeah. My mom texted me, but that wasn't the first thing I saw when I woke up, but it's really heartbreaking. Honestly, like seeing all of these like posts pour in, I was like, damn, she's in so much.
Yeah.
In my mind, she's always Dawn in Buffy because that was my first exposure to her. But all of these like kind of 90s, early aughts classics.
Like Ice Princess, and a couple months ago I watched the 2006 Black Christmas, which
Mm-hmm.
she's in.
Mm-hmm. And I was just a Mysterious Skin, which I still haven't seen yet,
Yeah,
but
same.
another Rocky film.
Yeah. And the Pope is ill, which kind of aided in my revisiting the Borgias, because I'm like, what if we put the most unhinged Pope imaginable back on?
I know nothing about papal politics, so
Have you watched Conclave?
I still have no, I haven't seen Conclave.
It's very different vibes from the Borgias, but if your favorite turns out to be Cardinal Tedesco, then you'll really like the Borgias. That's all I'm gonna say.
Okay, I guess I need to see.
Tedesco is the one with the vape hits.
I thought I isn't that guy also racist? I feel like I
Yes.
remember. Okay, but is he camp? Is he a fun
He,
character?
on various occasions, hits his vape at the worst possible times. But
That
yeah,
sounds that sounds kind of fun. Interesting. Well, is there any other rapid fire in our not actually very rapid fire segment
yeah.
we should mention? Oh, let me pull up my letterbox because if I look at it later and I find out there was something I didn't
We
mention, I'll
both
be so
watched
mad.
Peeping Tom for the first time, but
Oh
like
my God,
separately
Peeping
on our
Tom
own.
was.
Yes.
Oh my God, that was so fucking good. That Peeping Tom is so fucking good. That film made me feel crazy, like just in the sense of like I like meta shit. I like being aware of intentionally like referencing the medium that you are working within to like build out these themes, and I like films that acknowledge that there is that an audience has a desire to look even at the most like horrific things. And oh my God,
Yeah,
I it
it's
was.
also just gorgeous to look at because I don't remember which of the two, but it's one of the Powell and Pressburger
Yes, I think
guys.
it's Powell. Yes, it is Powell, Michael Powell. directed by. Let's see. Other things that I watched recently.
I love how we're
Uh,
just now just going through a letterbox.
yeah. Like I watched some stuff that was like interesting, but I'm like, I could talk about it. I mean, I'll say this. I watched The Lair of the White Worm, and now I really want to watch The Devils.
Oh, we have to watch The Devils together.
Yeah. Wait, have you seen it?
No, I haven't, but I know it's gonna be fun.
Yeah.
And I know it's friend of the pod, Nicole's like one of her favorite movies.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's one of those films that like everyone talks about as being like,
Yeah.
oh yeah. No. But yeah, I don't know. I watched some Cronenberg recently. Rewatched Cronenberg. I need to see Crimes of the Future still. And then I forgot that he did a film last year too. And I was like, because I feel like it got very little press. I got like Crimes of the Future got a lot of people talking about it, but then he made released The Shrouds in 2024, and then like barely anyone talked about it. But it like also
Yeah.
sounds really interesting. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I rewatched Dead Ringers and Videodrome in the last couple weeks. And
Oh, I watched Pin, which I need to remake because I'm like, this is crazy. I think I could kind of improve upon it in some ways. I just feel the need to make it my own.
it that the title makes me think it's like a Hellraiser-esque film.
Well, it's actually like I would describe it as like a creepy drama
Oh,
about this like medical dummy that the main character gets like fixated on from a very young age.
huh.
It's just a weird family drama in a like similar way as Dead Ringers,
I feel like you do really
but more
like.
camp
Okay. Oh.
because it's very melodrama. Some people have compared it to like the Flowers in the Attic, like not just in content but also like the general style of it.
So everything you've said so far does make it sound like it's something you should direct.
You're like, that tracks.
Yeah, that
That
tracks.
tracks. And Pin is like the name of the dummy, and it's the scariest thing you will ever see in your life.
Oh my God.
I I like whenever I cut to him, I'm like, I kill it with hammers, throw it in the
Well,
trash, burn down the
okay.
house.
Wait. I'm going to use this unless you have something else you really want to say. I feel like this is a good segue into the films that we are discussing
Yeah.
today, specifically because I found Mouse Heaven to be so freaking creepy. I
It's
was
the
like,
soulless eyes
I
that are
do not
just staring at the camera for 10 minutes.
I do not like dolls. I mean dolls are okay. My mom collects old dolls. I don't know if you remember that because you did visit, but like she has a bunch of
What
doll
time
heads
period?
and
What? Because
anything.
it depends.
Like she if she thinks it looks pretty and cool and like semi-haunted, she will buy it. Um she has a lot of mannequin heads rather. Like she has little dolls and then she has mannequin heads that
I
like
know there's like this Instagram account of this guy who has like allegedly haunted dolls and he plays music to them.
uh, but I think
Anyways,
what's worse with the Mickey Mouse toys is that I think I've referenced this before. I am even more unnerved when it's something that is a clearly recognizable, like, childhood IP that then gets fucked with. And I know that that's why people do it,
and
but
that's kind of the point of the movie.
I know it was so my letterbox review was why is this film more unnerving to me than Kenneth Anger's film with like literal Nazi imagery and a guy who like actually died allegedly. Like why is the mouse Mickey Mouse more creepy to me? Um Hey, we're talking about Kenneth Anger
Yeah.
today.
Specifically, three of his shorts that I feel like I mainly selected them because they were like a good span of time between them. So, like, you can tell that there's different eras. Even though,
Yeah.
like, the earliest one, Puce Moment, it was technically filmed in 49, but like the music was added in the 70s or
Yeah.
late 60s.
Um, but oh gosh, I also love that because it's also like it's 1920s and that's aesthetic. But then it was
Yeah.
filmed in 49 and then
49.
there's this music and then it's like what era is this? It's very like all the layers. So yeah, it's Puce Moment, which is also like the surviving fragment of a larger film that never got
Yeah.
finished. And then we looked at Scorpio Rising, which I feel like is his most famous film.
It's one of them,
Yeah. And what was
but
the
it's
what
my
the
favorite of
when did
his
that?
that I've seen.
Oh, I
Scorpio Rising is from 1963.
okay. I will also agree. So this was my first time watching any kind of Anger. I feel like on a future or not future, obviously, a previous episode we were like just talking camp icons and you were mentioned Kenneth Anger and I was like, "Oh, I still haven't seen anything." So, we're now finally
Yeah.
discussing him.
Yeah,
And
prior to Puce Moment and Mouse Heaven, I had only watched Scorpio Rising and Fireworks, which is also
mm,
really good.
yeah, Fireworks I'm going to watch. Um oh, I should
There's
say
a whole playlist on YouTube that's like all of his films.
I
So,
it's on YouTube, but I did
yeah.
our patrons get to see the actual physical. Come on. There we go. Have
A
it be in
little
focus.
blurry zoom thing.
My blurry. I actually checked out DVDs from Scarecrow Video because I wanted as like good quality as possible because I know sometimes things uploaded to YouTube or Daily Motion or whatever is not as good quality. And also these DVDs had director commentary. So I
Oh,
was able to watch Puce Moment and Scorpio Rising because they're short films. So I watched them and then I watched them again with Kenneth Anger's commentary. So I have
that reminds me, I need
his.
to listen to the Ultimate Cut commentary with Graham Morrison.
Oh. um, but the last thing I'll say about these DVDs, there was volume one, which I could just check out like any other um, Scarecrow rental. I mean, for me, I'm able to get them for free because of my Grand Illusion volunteer position. For volume two, I did have to put down a $200 deposit
Oh,
uh,
wow.
because it's one of the like really rare special DVDs that they have. For some reason, I think it was these were done by Fantoma. The volume 1 of the Kenneth Anger shorts are super like pretty like generally accessible. The guy who was checking them out for me was saying that like his roommate has like volume 1 but had never seen volume 2. So, I mean, it's safe. It's fine. I'm looking after it. I'll return it so then I'll get my deposit back.
I'm
But
I'm praying for it.
that kind of made it a little extra scary, but also extra special. And also, like, I really, I'm really glad we got it. We're doing this episode because, I mean, the season has been about, like, in some ways, like, getting back to the basics of camp. I feel like Kenneth Anger is definitely one of those directors I've always like heard his name in discussions of like camp people, but we're also kind of like talking about like, ooh, what are some ways that camp can be? I mean, camps we've talked about the transgressiveness of camp before, but like, what are ways that there can be like danger and pain and cruelty in camp? I feel like Scorpio Rising is so much to talk about. And also, like, as we said, like at the political moment that we're making this podcast in, it feels really important to get to talk about like queer filmmakers and creators who are like unapologetically like experimenting and trying new things out and being themselves in the way they're making their art. So, with that, my little preamble why I'm so excited, would you like to share your experience with Kenneth Anger and why you besides what you've already said, like why you pulled these films out, like what was your experience watching him before this podcast?
So a couple of years ago, like I had like known about him. I've seen pictures of him. I watched video essays about his work, but I only like watched his films or like started watching his films like on the day that he died. Because I'm like
Mm,
I need to watch his work now, and that was like a couple of years ago. But yeah, he's just like a generally like not just a very important filmmaker in terms of like the history of film, but also like a really interesting guy.
yeah. I know
And
very
I
little
feel
about
like,
him actually as a person. I know he has the tattoo, right?
yeah, he has a huge tattoo of the word Lucifer across his chest. And I
Baller.
feel like a lot of who he is very much shown in the like eulogy obituary thing that was published in the Guardian.
Mm,
And I was like, I need to read this in full on the pod
do
because
it.
it's so good. It says Kenneth Anger, the artist and filmmaker whose work offered a distinctively radical mix of paganism and homoeroticism, has died aged 96. Art galleries for Magers confirmed his death, saying, through his kaleidoscopic films, which combine sumptuous visuals, popular music soundtracks, and a focus on queer themes and narratives, Anger laid the groundwork for the avant garde art scenes of the later 20th century, as well as for the visual languages of contemporary queer and youth culture. Anger's films, which included Fireworks, Inauguration of the Pleasure Dome, Scorpio Rising, and Lucifer Rising, made him a key figure in the counterculture over 4 decades, and later a hero to subsequent generations of filmmakers grappling with similar themes. While he never found commercial success through his films, his book Hollywood Babylon, a compendium of often sleazy and largely unverifiable gossip about the film industry, became famous after first being published in 1959. It was followed by a sequel in 1984. Born Kenneth Engelmeyer in 1927, Anger grew up in Santa Monica and claimed to have appeared in the 1935 film of A Midsummer Night Dream. Having moved to Los Angeles, he met avant-garde filmmaker Curtis Harrington, who introduced him to the occult writings of Aleister Crowley. In 1947, having made films at home for years, Anger completed Fireworks, a surreal experimental short, combining Crowley's ideas with homoerotic imagery. It became notorious for a shot of a sailor unzipping his flag to reveal a Roman candle and setting it alight. A decade later, distributor Raymond Brower was convicted for obscenity for showing fireworks in a Los Angeles cinema in 1957. It became a civil rights issue, and the California Supreme Court, in a landmark judgment, overturned the ruling, saying that reference to homosexuality in a film was not obscenity.
Yes.
Anger would go on to make a number of shorts that would garner him celebrity on the underground film circuit. In 1953, inauguration of the Pleasure Dome saw him go deeper into Crowley's Thelemite spiritual philosophy, while Scorpio Rising was a surreal exploration of American leather biker culture with an influential pop soundtrack. As the counterculture became more popular in the late 60s, Anger became friendly with Mick Jagger, Marianne Faithfull, Jimmy Page, and John Paul Getty Jr. Jagger appeared in Anger's 1969 film Invocation of My Demon Brother, along with featured Charles Manson acolyte Bobby Bosel and Satanist Anton LaVey, while Faithful starred in Lucifer Rising, which Anger finished in 1981. Chronically short of money, despite the success of his books, Anger largely gave up filmmaking in the 1980s. But he came out of retirement in 2000 to make a number more, including Patriotic Penis, Mouse Heaven, and Uniform Attraction. He told The Guardian in 2010 that he had a third installment of Hollywood Babylon completed, but was unable to publish it due to a chapter of material on Tom Cruise and Scientology.
Oh.
That's the end.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a lot. His life was a lot.
I mean, I feel like I remember us talking during like the Gregoraki episode of being like Gregoraki wouldn't have existed without John Waters. But I was also kind of reading these different letterbox reviews and people were saying like John Waters wouldn't have existed without Kenneth Anger. Like
Yeah, Fireworks was late 40s.
this is like if we go back like this is a director who truly was so like yeah, like making things so early on. And I don't know, like yeah, like the underground of the underground. I mean, like we're obviously like filmmakers who know him, and I think a lot of probably like art house film critics and stuff, like and movie go like audience members probably would be familiar with Kenneth Anger, but it's also I don't know, there's some I get kind of emotional sometimes when I think about like artists who have a huge impact but also never had commercial success and like I don't know, it feels really I never quite know how to feel when it's like our I don't want art to be tied to capitalism in the sense where it's like you're only making art to survive, but I also feel like you should be able to survive off the art you do make. And then I'm like, well then what is success? Is success being able to make a living off art, or is success being able to have influence and to have like be remembered with such fondness by people? I don't know. It's very complicated. And I don't have good answers on things.
Yeah. Like, where do you want to start with the films?
I mean, I kind of feel like if we go
Yeah.
chronologically, because I did watch them in the order of release. So I watched Puce Moment, then I watched Scorpio Rising, then I watched Mouse Heaven. But it also feels like Scorpio Rising is the densest of the text. I mean, it's the longest
Yeah. I
too.
I watched them in order of length. Like, so I went
Mm.
Puce Moment, Mouse Heaven, Scorpio Rising.
Well, let's talk about Puce Moment first then.
Yeah.
That seems like the common place to start. You know what I wrote down was that it felt so like classically camp to me.
Yeah, because it's entirely about dressing up to
Yeah.
just go walk your dogs.
It's delighting in materialism and just
Yeah.
like the visuals of opulence is what I wrote down as well. Just like it
Yeah, like the material, it's not that it's like about the outfits, it's also that the outfits are very bright and have like sparkles and sequins and they're very 1920s
yeah.
inspired.
You what would you say? I mean, the plot is essentially a woman gets ready to go out.
To like specifically walk her dogs.
Yeah. It's very like silent movie era. The dresses, I don't know if you read this, but from the commentary, Anger said like the dresses were from his grandmother who was like a costumer for silent films.
Mm.
And it's just like all these gorgeous, sparkly, tasseled dresses. Also, the other thing I was thinking
It
about was
kind of
like,
reminded me of the Hannah Montana closet.
oh my god, I didn't see that, but I do see that, you know? what I was gonna say though is that I was like, oh, like, okay, these were these costumes from like silent movies, but those were in black and white. And I feel like I often think of like when I think flapper dresses, I think like black and white or like, black dress. Like I have a black dress that's like a flapper style that's black that has these silver beads and stuff on it. So it like feels different than like my memory of what that era would be to see like these colorful dresses. But they're all these gorgeous colors, and the fabric looks like so like they're I mean, it's like because when it was back when they actually like made dresses that were like nice quality, there wasn't fast fashion then, so it looks they look so beautiful, and like it's this gorgeous like shot on I think this gorgeous color film, and it's kind of a weird mishmash of eras, and
Yeah,
it's like I wouldn't say it's timeless because it's not like you're
it's
pinpointing.
just mixing different points in time.
Yeah, because it like the quality of the film is like it looks, I mean, it's 49, but it kind of looks like 50s Technicolor. And then, but it's 1920s fashion. But then the music's playing, which, as we said, like was added later. It's like 60s, like kind of folk rock.
It's like full classic rock.
Yeah. And I don't know. It's just this really, it's just fun. I was like, this is just,
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
it's the kind of camp where I'm like, okay, if we're listening to the lyrics of the song and we're watching these images, we can put together like what meaning are we going to pull from this? But honestly, watching it, I was like, I'm just having fun looking at all these colors and like the makeup of the actress, and that's another way of engaging things in a with a camp sensibility is to like I feel like really delight in the surface level of the visuals.
Yeah, I like noted that it was kind of invented romanticizing your life. Like
Mm.
it felt very vlogger.
Mm. Yeah.
It was very get ready with me.
That's that's really interesting. Honestly, for me, I feel like what I thought the most was that it felt very erotic. And
Yeah,
I don't
it's
know
interesting because like I didn't really get that from it.
if yeah, I don't know. There was something about like the fluttering eyes and like the sighing, and I also like the commentary also said like Anger used different camera speeds to kind of get this like that like feeling of a silent like early era film with like hand like the hand cranked camera, like it has
Yeah.
this kind of juddering camera speed, and it just felt very like I don't know, like breathy and eye fluttery. It just like felt very like like I don't know, it felt erotic to me.
Yeah, to me it was just like, oh, this is kind of similar to how like people acted in silent movies and like just and like with the different like camera speeds and everything. It just looked like the 20s, but it was filmed in the 40s. But then the
Yeah.
music is from the 70s.
Yeah. Yeah, so apparently the actress, I did not actually write down her name.
I
Did you
think
write
it's
that down?
Yvonne Marquise.
Yes. So is that like he didn't say this in the commentary, but then I was seeing in like letterbox comments that that was like a cousin of his or somehow like someone related to him.
Because like one of my like supplementary materials is a JSTOR article.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
forgetting the name of it, but I'll
Well,
get it. But it's about camp and Kenneth Anger in relation to like postmodernist
ooh.
filmmaking.
Well, something that Anchor did say in the commentary was that supposedly she became a mistress to a Mexican president later on. But it sounds like a lot of, besides being inspired by like 1920s films, there was a lot of like, it's inspired by art in a lot of way and kind of like culture. He said that because there's, it's very dreamlike too, because she like is like getting ready and then she like lays down on this like lounge that then like is like moving and like kind of like floating
The
out to this.
movie Lounge really reminded me of Un Chien Andalou from Luis Buñuel. It was like it's kind of like a
Like
collaboration with Dada, I think, but like I think there's a moment where they're like moving a piano.
I don't know the work you're referring to. Obviously, all those
You
names
have
sound familiar,
absolutely
but
seen the image of the woman getting her eye sliced. It's a
okay,
really famous image.
I've seen that, but I
That's
don't
from
remember.
that movie.
Okay, I did watch all of that in full, but I don't remember anything besides the woman getting her eye sliced. There's a floating piano?
They're like moving a piano or
I need
something.
to
I think
rewatch
that's one
that.
of the things I remember from it.
That's so funny. You're so right. I have seen that, but I don't remember anything else besides the woman with her eye sliced. And it's like a moon or something. I know it's very like that's like a very like cross-cutting like the whole like it's a whole film where they're basically pairing different images with each other. But
Yeah.
no, so the thing that
Anyways, the article is called Puce Moment, Campus Modernism and the Films of Kenneth Anger.
ooh. I'll say the kind of the Anger in the commentary said that the lounge floating out onto the piano was inspired by a painting by Florence Stettheimer, who was a 1920s fantasy painter. No idea what painting he's referring to, but um, it was just reminding me, I guess, of like in this like in Sontag's notes on camp, talking about all these like artifacts of like high art being camp, like all of these things of being so stylistic and this feels like a film that's at least very much involved with kind of that kind of camp of like just the highly stylized, very like part of a culture that comes also with a lot of wealth and status and power and the dogs like were apparently used in a lot of fashion photography and were owned by a
I
lot
mean,
of
they
rich
looked
people.
very chic.
Yeah,
Those are fancy dogs.
yeah, those. But then like to have that also combined with like the 60s, 70s like rock music is so interesting because that feels like kind of a more like popular culture than like combined with like this kind of upper class high culture. I don't know.
Yeah. And like the mix of high and low is very camp.
Yeah.
Just because like the like blurring of these allegedly separate things and separate cultures.
Well, and it's all about like images. Like that's the thing
Yeah.
that like to me, I mean, we'll get into it more with Scorpio Rising, but like
And
that
especially Mouse Heaven.
yeah. Oh, like that's the thing where I was like watching Kenneth Anger and I was like, holy shit, this is what filmmaking is. This is what camp is, where it's like, I'm going to show you an image and you are going to have all of your preconceived notions of what that image represents. And I'm going to change the meaning of that image, or at least add upon the meaning of that image by the images I surround it with. Like, I know I'm a little bit tipsy right
Yeah.
now, but I'm just like, that's filmmaking, baby. It's about the edit. I mean, it's not just the edit, it's the production. It's the like,
It's the ideas.
it's the ideas in imagery. Like, isn't that
And
so
audio, because all of this has like music in it, and like particularly Scorpio Rising has like a lot of popular iconic songs.
true, true? Like, I don't know. I feel like camp, I guess, is all about like what is the meaning you're making from this thing. And to be like to engage with something in a camp way is to acknowledge that we have these preconceived, I guess, biases and notions of like what things represent. And I think it's so important to be, I guess, aware of the meat of like our assumptions about what something might represent. I don't know if
And
I'm
just
making
then
sense,
and
but
then
I'm just like
just then twisting it. Because like the other
exactly.
thing that he does is that he like alters the like general meaning of the
Yeah.
images that he's using and the songs that he's using.
And that's, I think, the thing that I'm like, okay, like Puce Moment's like, ooh, I see those vibes. Like, I see that there's like these pairings of things happening, but I'm kind of like, maybe it's too short, or maybe I'm just like, it's material that I don't connect with as much, but I'm like, yeah, that's fine. It's when we get to Scorpio Rising that I'm like, oh my God, I feel like my brain's exploding with all of the things that are happening, and it feels like it really like was challenging me. But we could talk about
Yeah, I feel like
Now's Heaven
that's the
next.
good like last of the three.
Yeah. Do you have anything else to say about Puce Moment? Besides that, I'll add real quick. Apparently Puce means purple. I think I maybe knew that at one point, but it was like a term for like a shade of purple. And so like the dress that she's wearing is puce.
I feel like a lot of my notes on the article or about like Scorpio Rising.
Yeah.
But I also found what the Whitney Museum says about Mouse Heaven,
Oh,
which
wait,
I think is
actually,
really fun.
while we're still talking about Puce Moment, I'll read because I was like, didn't I screenshot some letterbox reviews? I screenshotted one, which was for Puce Moment by user Nick R. This could be they get the final word on Puce Moment, which is quote, fold past parentheses the referent, present parentheses the scene, and future parentheses the soundtrack into its spangly embrace, recovering the lost pleasure of the cinema, the presentational gesture showing as unveiling as an intrinsically aesthetic deformation of worlds.
Yeah, like that's the point of it. It's the folding of time and also having fun with daily life and with clothes.
Yeah, like in some ways also it's like in treating it with this like reverence, it also it deconstructs it at the same time in the way that it like pairs all the things. It's like, ooh, this like the glory of the glamorous 1920s, but you're also like kind of it's fake in the way it's because of the soundtrack, because of the way you know it was filmed not in the 1920s. It's very interesting. So I see why you picked it.
Yeah, it's very classic embrace of artifice and just the like again the blending of time
Mm-hmm.
and like yeah it basically being about just like genuinely embracing artifice in fashion while also letting the audience sit with it.
Mm-hmm. And then Mouse Heaven, I guess, is a lot more weird.
Yeah,
It's a lot more it's deconstructs things even further.
yeah, like it the vibes of it are very love hate,
Mm.
but I think it's best to introduce it with like the paragraph the Whitney Museum has for it.
Yeah.
So it says, using a range of editing techniques and digital effects, Kenneth Anger animates a collection of rare Mickey Mouse memorabilia to both celebrate and critique one of Hollywood's most recognizable symbols. The film is divided into movements, each with its own color scheme and thematic focus, and accompanied by a soundtrack of pop songs selected for their structural and suggestive qualities. On the surface, this is a playful topology of an American emblem in its many forms. cartoon, toy, souvenir, appliance, tattoo, and materials: plastic, wood, ceramic, cardboard, tin, fabric, rubber. But on a deeper level, Mass Heaven alludes to the social, cultural, and sexual implications of what Anger calls this, quote, demon fetish figure. The idea of Mickey as an automaton is established in the very first image, which shows a real mouse in a cage. And by the film's end, the icon is presented as pure commodity, with the last iteration of his form made from a quarter and 2 dimes.
Yeah. I bet Walt Disney, the Disney company, did not like this film. Do they know it exists? They must know it exists.
They probably do know it. The entire thing is Mickey. They probably do know.
Yeah, because they're so like protective of their IP. I said at the top, but I find recognizable objects and like this is creepy. There's this film, I do not remember what it's called. If I start talking about it and this sounds familiar, please say what the name was. But there was this film I remember reading about on Wikipedia. Maybe like I found out about it from a YouTube video essay actually first, where it was like some unauthorized, it was kind of like guerrilla filmmaking where it was like filmed at Disneyland, but
Is
like
it the Tomorrowland movie?
maybe it was like
There's
about,
Jenny Nicholson did a whole video about it. I think it's called Escape from Tomorrowland. The full
yeah,
movie.
where it was like some guy who basically like is obsessed with Mickey Mouse or something, and then he like goes to Disneyland and he like becomes like sick and like is like coughing up blood and stuff because of like Mickey.
No, I think it's about him like going on a trip with his family, but then he like gets distracted by tourists and then like has an affair, and like it's kind of like a weird conspiracy vibe with like the princesses, and then they
Oh,
like take him and hospitalize him or something.
maybe that's the same movie. Maybe it wasn't coughing up
Yeah.
blood. I think he like coughed up like a hairball or something. I don't know. I just remember,
Anyways, it was shot guerrilla style on the Disney parks.
yeah. I don't know. I just remember reading a Wikipedia page and being really creeped out. Um, when I was like, I don't know, 13. Um, and that's what this movie reminded me of. It reminded me of like, I don't know, like I don't know if it was because I just watched it on my, as is, and I then didn't have a commentary track to go to like the others. But I was feeling very stuck on my like base reading of it, which is like, let's just take this image that you are familiar with because it's so well known, and like twist it to be something kind of like just recognizable enough to it to feel uncanny, where it
Yeah,
feels like,
I feel like it's both about that and also just showing just how much memorabilia and consumerism there is of like this one character.
yeah, it was like vaguely sexual and also
Yeah.
vaguely demonic. I guess you already said like
Yeah.
what did he call it?
He called Mickey a demon fetish figure,
Yeah.
which like knowing him, I'm like not sure that's entirely a like putting Mickey down. Cause like
Yeah.
I think you like demons.
It's like, I should say, I'm also not against something being sexualized and I'm not against something being demonic. Like, I'm not against something being a demonic fetish figure. I guess there's just a part of me that's like my gut reaction when I am used to seeing an image and being like, that is something for kids. Like, yes, absolutely, you're right that it is a a symbol of consumerism as well. Walt Disney and like the company of it doesn't really, in my brain, and now that as I'm aware of like the state of the film industry, like the Disney company doesn't represent childhood innocence. It represents like just trying to make a profit. But the character of Mickey Mouse I still associate with being a little kid and getting to go to Disneyland. And so I am like, I have that gut reaction to be like, I don't, wait, no, what do you mean it's you're turning it into something
I
else?
feel like there are cringe ways of subverting Mickey Mouse, but I don't think this is like one of the cringe examples. I think the
Mm,
gorilla movie is a cringe example of like making commentary on Mickey Mouse, but I think this one is pretty like original with it. It's not like really going on a conspiracy route or a Mickey is secretly evil creepy pasta
yeah.
route. And this also kind of like in a way to like do a kind of season retrospective. It kind of reminds me of our conversation about South Park and how you were
Mm,
saying that like part of what bothers you is like the childlike imagery being
mm-hmm.
distorted. So it's like, oh, I've heard this before in this
Yeah.
season.
Yeah, and I want to say, like, I also do agree with you that it doesn't feel cringe, really, and I don't know why.
It
So I'd like
doesn't
to,
feel like a creepy pasta.
I'd like us to definitely try to pull that apart. But I also want to say before that, like, this is my own opinion on it. This is my own taste. And if we're doing a
Yeah.
retrospective on this season, I feel like conversations this season have made me feel more comfortable being very clear like this is my feelings about it, this is my
Yeah.
taste, and this is my personal boundary, and that is other people can have their own boundaries and their own tastes. I mean, our conversation about like death becomes her, and on the other side, our conversation about bad girls go to hell, in the sense that I was against death becomes her and then I was for bad girls go to hell, like
And also Divinity, which I think is
yeah.
like our most divisive episode in terms of like the guests' opinions and my opinions and the Patreon and your opinions.
Yeah. I appreciate that conversations we've had this season has made me like I guess feel more confident expressing something that is my opinion in an academic sense, because I feel like when I've before when I've been like, okay, I'm going to engage with this text like analytically, there's part of me been like, I can share my opinion, but like if I'm analyzing it, it should still be from this like, I don't know, this place of kind of like somewhat of a higher, kind of higher, more critical, like a critic doesn't feel feelings. A critic like thinks about it objectively. And like in our conversations, because it's about camp and like kind of understanding that camp is like, you know, good, bad taste, like just like enjoying something because you enjoy it and being like feeling like be like, no, I am justified in enjoying this. I feel like this season has made me more confident in being like, I like this or I dislike this. And that is like the way I'm expressing that is part of the way I am processing the media. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. And that kind of reminds me of like one of my like media updates that I didn't talk about, which was I finished reading Angela Carter's The Sadian Women, which is a
Mm,
very academic text, but like she does offer her opinion sometimes. Like she like she's kind of funny, and to me the funniest moment was like she went on a whole rant about how this was not the writing choice I would have made.
mm,
And she's
mm,
going, this is how I would have written it.
mm.
And it's like the kind of it's like still academic in a way, but it's kind of the least academic she is in that
Mm.
book, even though it's like a thoroughly academic book that is very dense, which is why it took me so long to read it, because it's technically short, but you also have to reread every single paragraph to like fully
Yeah.
digest what's saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways.
But do you think it's accurate to say that there is like to enjoy something and to express your enjoyment of something, there's like a way that you can do it in a way that's like in a as like you're enjoying something in a camp way rather than just enjoying something.
I mean, we've kind of been doing this for 3 seasons.
Yeah.
You've already been doing that.
I guess I got it in my head where it's like to enjoy something in a camp way is to argue why you enjoy it. But like I am like I feel like no, I'm actually coming to realize that there's kind of this middle ground of being like instead of just being like, yeah, I liked it, and then being like, here's why I like it. It's like I like it and I know why I like it, and I don't have to argue why I like it, but I like I don't know. Does that make
It's
sense where there's
about being able to like watch or enjoy something at various levels. And I feel like
yeah.
that's also what like a lot of Kenneth Anger's work is. Because
Mm.
Mouse Heaven is in a way like commentary on the image that the mouse has become like as a consumer, a corporate image and a representation of this real animal that has like at this point zero association with Mickey Mouse, even
Mm-hmm.
though they're both mice.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also like he's just showing off his friend's Mickey Mouse memorabilia collection as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's I guess maybe the thing that makes it feel less cringe, as you said earlier, where it's like there is something if there is this kind of like, these films or whatever, these like creepy pastas that have been like, ooh,
There
I'm
needs to
going
be a
to
level of appreciation to it for it to
exactly.
work.
Yeah, because cringe is to be like, I do not like I feel like something that is cringy is when you can tell that the person is cringing. Because I try not to cringe at stuff. Cringe is like fine. I do not. I see myself in
Or
that,
like
and
when
I
you
do
can
not like
tell that
that.
the person thinks that they're very smart and the work is being very smart when and then you're like actually this is not that smart.
Yeah, like there's a kind of like trying too hard, I guess. When it's like if you're just not taking yourself too seriously, because it's like if you're taking yourself so seriously, but like I guess it's the difference between like intentional and naive camp in a way. I mean, it's different because like
Yeah.
something that can cringy isn't camp, but like being aware that like you're just kind of like having fun versus like I think I am committing to the bit and I am so like in it and I'm not even aware. I'm
And
not
this
even
is
committing
very
to the bit.
serious.
It's not even committing to the bit because you don't realize it's a bit, I guess.
Yeah.
Like yeah. I mean, it was Mouse Heaven like brilliantly produced. Like I'm not like I just it didn't quite hit with me as much as the other ones, but I do think that like there's that one song like singing about being a puppet, and it's literally
Yeah.
showing Mickey Mouse
This is the
puppets.
puppets section of the collection.
But like then it's also like
And it's also showing like a carousel accident, and it kind of looks like Mickey's killing all these people.
well, that's the thing is that it's like, okay, if is Mickey the puppet or are we who are buying all these Mickey products the puppet? It definitely does make me think like, okay, who is whose strings are being pulled and who is pulling those strings? I think definitely a combination of images and sound that like make me pause a moment and think. And I think the animation and like the way like the various songs like there's like a tapping of a drum that's like timed to like a little Mickey tapping the drum and like singing and stuff like it's very smooth and like very well done. I guess in some ways ideas about consumerism, you have to make that leap yourself. Which is like some might argue is a strength, but like I guess because I watched it right after Scorpio Rising, where Scorpio Rising is kind of like laying out all of these images right next to each other, like anything that you like, not even, I was going to say anything that you might think could be paired with it. It's like things that you might not even expect to be paired with it. You're
Yeah,
seeing these
Scorpio
connections being
Rising
made.
is like image association galaxy brain.
Exactly. So I was like, oh, that's what's possible. But then Mouse Heaven like felt more scaled back, I guess, where it's like, oh, the only images I'm seeing, well, besides the carousel accident, were mouse images. So I was like, oh, wait, we're not going to get to see anything else? We're not going to get to see like Disneyland? We're not going to get to see like other Mickey Mouse Disney properties? I don't know. It felt.
I did love the like near the end where Mickey kind of looks like a glowing god and he's just so shiny. And then of course at the end it's the shape of him in money, which is
Yeah,
like his arguably his final form, and I think that's what the film argues as well.
that's a good
Like the
point.
final form of this creature that exists, the mouse, is three items of monetary value.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say there is a lot of nice glittery shiny bits in all three films of Kenneth Anger
Yeah,
we watched for this episode.
yeah,
There is some good glitter, and
yeah.
I to me like that's camp. If it's shiny and sparkly, that's camp, baby.
And also gay vibes, which kind of leads us to Scorpio Rising.
Scorpio, yay!
Yeah.
This was the film that I requested when you were like, I'm gonna put together a list of the shorts we're watching. It was like,
Yeah,
can
and
one
this
of them
one
be
was
Scorpio Rising?
definitely yeah, this one also being my favorite of his that I've seen, it was definitely going
So,
on
okay,
this.
here's the thing. I feel like I had seen this description where it's like bikers are gonna like engage in this like sadomasochistic ritual, and I was expecting a lot more sex,
But the vibe is there.
but the vibe is there. It's fascinating. It's just the things that I was expecting I didn't really get, but I what I did get was something I would have never
It's crazy.
expected. It's
And I
so
feel like this is arguably like apart from like the assessment of Mickey as a demon fetish figure, this one is arguably like the most magic-y and occulty of his
mm,
works that we selected.
yeah. Well, it's
And
very like I
it
mean, it's all about the image. It's all about like what does this represent? And that there is a magic to that of like
yeah. And the article, like one of the things I highlighted was attracted to paganism from an early age, Anger eventually gravitated towards the teaching of the British occultist Aleister Crowley. Crowley's philosophy, called magic with CK, was based on the principle of the magic ritual, in which aspirants, quote, invoke the magic spirits by various means, drugs, the use of occult objects and words, and so on. A Crowleyan tenet with particular relevance to Anger and camp is, quote, sacredness of sex, which makes a sacrament of sex. As Robert Heller points out, however, while Anger is a student of Crowley, it would be misleading to assume that his films are essentially illustrations of Crowley. Anger
mm,
himself has averred, I remain a skeptic, at the same time, I'm a believer.
yeah. I don't really know much about Aleister Crowley. Like what did he actually like
He was like
preach?
an occultist writer, like particularly like Satanist leaning.
But like in what sense that it's like, oh, like we should worship Satan as what? Like Satan can represent so many things to
Yeah.
different people.
modern Satanism is very like atheistic and very much about like making points about institutionalized religion.
Yeah.
But like Alistair was very like true believer in like magic
Mm,
stuff. At least that's what I know of him.
interesting. So I will say the way I watched Scorpio Rising is I kind of just let it all wash over me. And
Yeah, that's the vibe of it.
I only wrote down notes while I was then watching the film again with the commentary from Anger. And I'll say this too about the commentary that I watched. I feel like it was very good at just giving like the context of the way Anger was describing he made the film rather than like there were some things he was like, "Oh, I think this means this." But it was just like kind of a general philosophy. Like, okay, he was talking about like, oh, the Scorpio sign in zodiac like is connected to like sexuality and to machinery. So you can then interpret like, okay, what does this then the name of the film means? Like, what does this like recurring scorpion symbol means? He wasn't like, it was very much like, even watching the commentary, it was like up to you to make meaning out of the images, um, which I really appreciated. But it sounds like, at least the way Anger talked about the creation of this film, it was almost like a documentary. Like he was just like, oh, I just like met these guys and I filmed
Like
them.
this the style of a lot of the shots is very documentary, like it's very handheld.
Yeah. But I definitely was questioning like how much of what he's saying happened actually happened. So I'm curious like what you read about like the creation of this movie. Like,
So I
is
read
it
a lot
true
of
that someone
like
actually died?
interpretation, and I feel like one of the interesting things about Anger, like specifically pertaining to like the Hollywood Babylon novels, is how like it kind of puts you at a sort of unease as to like is 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 he telling the truth or is he just
Okay,
saying this?
I'm glad I'm not the only one who was thinking that.
And like that's kind of part of his charm as a filmmaker and pop culture figure. Is that
Mm-hmm.
he just says things.
Well, in some ways, it feels like that's kind of like occultism. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, it's not about proof; it's about whether you believe it or not.
Yeah. But I took note of a lot of analysis of Scorpio Rising.
Okay, well, do we want to like run through?
Yeah, we should first like talk about what it's about.
Yeah, essentially, we're following these various bikers as they're getting ready to go meet up, and then we see their meetup, and then we see like a race that they do, and all of these kind of there's like these different scenes, and the whole thing is accompanied by like pop rock songs from the 50s and 60s. um I think all of them were pretty familiar to me. um like the soundtrack's wild, honestly. I'm like, how did he get the rights to these things? Did he get the rights to these things?
I am not sure, but they are in the movie.
Yeah.
And they're all really famous songs from the time.
I do have Devil in the Disguise. Wait, is the song called Devil in Disguise?
Yeah.
That's stuck in my head
And
now.
I one of my saved Spotify playlist is like specifically a playlist of all the songs that are in Scorpio Rising.
It's a fucking banger soundtrack.
Yeah.
Um, I'll say this. So, I think people I talked about it on this pod, so people know I used to work at a vintage mall. And one of our bosses basically, he would play like classic rock mixes because it's like, oh, that's like vintage and people would like to hear that when they come into the mall. And there's some songs that I am so tired of now because I heard so many times, and it was like
And
this
are
used to be
they
a
in?
classic. That's the thing, is I'll say about this soundtrack. The songs are so good that even though some of them I've heard so many times, I still like all of them. Like, what's the one? It's like, my boyfriend's back. Da, 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 da,
I
da,
think it
da,
is
da,
just
da.
called
Hey
Boyfriend's Back.
now, hey now, my boyfriend's back.
Yeah.
That song's fun and it's catchy and the
And it's set to like just footage of this biker guy in his room with his cat, and he's like getting ready and putting on his like biker stuff and
the
reading comics.
well, so that's I think the boyfriend back is when the first guy we see is repairing his bike. Devil in
Yeah.
Disguise is
Yeah,
for
is the second. The
Devil
guy
in
with
Dis-
the cat.
the Devil in Disguise and
Because
the
like it
song.
starts with a bunch of like motorcycles and gears, and then it moves on to like this guy at his home and he's getting ready, and then we're with the group of guys, and
Yeah.
then it keeps going.
So, and according to Anger, he pretty much everything that he was filming was like their homes, their workshops and rooms, and like sounds like the Nazi flags and like the Nazi chess game were like from his personal archives that he then brought into like film. But like according to Anger, at least, all of everything else that's happened, he was just an observer to. He did not like direct them. And it's very, I mean, okay, I'll say
We
this.
need to talk about like what it evolves into.
It evolves into so, this like weird party where they're like wearing like these like like these like creepy masks and like skeleton costumes, and then they're like pulling like they're like mooning each other and like pulling their dicks out, and they're like rubbing mustard on one guy, and then there's all this intercutting of imagery of this like religious film,
It's
which,
like a Jesus movie. That's Jesus.
and again, according to Anger, it was mistakenly delivered to his door, and he like then kept it and like intercut it into the film. And then there's intercutting of like again these like I had heard it was like Nazi imagery, and I was like halfway through the film, I was like, when is the Nazi imagery going to show up? Like obviously there is
Soon.
some fascist imagery that I'm picking up on, but then I was like, oh no, that's a swastika. Oh, that's Hitler. Okay, but and then it's like you get this like deluge of like sound and images of like these bikers and Hitler and Jesus and
And
rock
Marlon
songs,
Brando
Marlon Brando,
and James Dean and comic books.
and then they're like doing this race, and like there's this at the end this like crash, and according to Anger again, like that was a guy who actually crashed and snapped his neck and died, and he captured that actual death on footage, and like there's all this flashing light and this, it's like,
And like in that guy's room, there is like a newspaper saying that like motorcycle crash kills two.
yeah, and the guy who died apparently, I couldn't read what his was tattooed on his arm, but listening to the commentary, apparently the tattoo said "Blessed, Blessed Oblivion." So like, it's it's like a death cult, and so I
Yeah.
understand the intercutting of this Nazi imagery. I mean, I watched the
And
film and
like
then I
one of the songs was very death cult vibes to me in this context.
was it.
Like,
I love him. I will always follow him. Those
yeah.
was the lyrics that I wrote down. I
Yeah,
can't remember
there's
what
that
that song.
one. There's also like You Can Depend on Me by the Miracles. Yeah. I don't think the
Yeah,
like song list is complete, but it has most of them.
yeah.
I
I wrote
loved
down.
Wind Up Doll
Oh my
with all
god.
the like car fixing and like
And
motorcycle
the
fixing.
actual wind up toys.
Yeah. Yeah. And how it kind of was alluding to how like motorcycles are like the guy version of dolls, and how like these are just
Mm.
like toys. Like dolls and motorcycles are basically the same thing, but in different forms and with different like gendered expectations.
Well, and another thing that Anger said in the commentary was that all these, like, most of these men that he were filming had girlfriends, but they spent all their money on their bikes. So he called the bikes the mistresses. Like, and
Mm.
also, like, I think there's like one woman maybe at like in these shots of this party they're going to, which was like supposedly a Halloween party. But like most of the girlfriends and wives and stuff were like they were kept behind the camera. So it ends up being very homoerotic and like centering these men because that's all you see.
The vibes were very like the those few scenes in Challengers where Patrick and Art are like tackling each other, and it feels like what's going on.
Well, so I wanted to say, after I watched the film and then I watched the commentary, I went back and read Sontag. Not Notes on Camp, though. I did go back and I reread Fascinating Fascism, which was a text that we read when we took a Nazi cinema course. And I didn't remember that she referenced Scorpio Rising, but she does briefly mention Scorpio Rising. Actually, but it's her. There's kind of two sections of Fascinating Fascism, which was like her. It was like a book review, and the first book that she reviewed was Leni Riefenstahl book, and then the second book she reviewed was a photo book of like SS uniforms, and the whole kind of essay as a whole ends up her being like critiquing how the aesthetics of fascism essentially, and then the second section is like the eroticism of this like fascist imagery. And I found it, I was like, I think it's, I wanted to reread it because I was like, this, I'd want another voice to kind of wrap my head around like how all of these images are put together. Because I mean, Scorpio Rising, it's like these symbols of American masculinity and these symbols of like totalitarian fascist, like the Nazi regime, and then these imageries of like Jesus and religious figures. And there's a scene where they're
And
like
it like
in a
puts
church.
Jesus and Hitler together. Like one of my favorite shots from the film is like the Nazi skull, and then its eyes turn into like these images of Jesus.
Yeah. And then like it's very like, I mean, to me, it feels like very American in the sense like it's an analysis of like American culture, because that religious influence and that fascism, like those are, I think, really influential to American culture. And we're getting also, we're seeing these like, you know, like American movie stars of James Dean and Marlon Brando, and then but then that's also tied to like sexuality and eroticism and like homoeroticism. And so it very much felt like,
Like it feels like it was twisting all of this image and going, this is sexy actually, but also actually all of this is fascistic as well. And it's like doing
exactly.
both of those things at the same time.
Yeah, it's like, I think to me the question that I was left with after like watching the film and then reading Fascinating Fascism is like, what is the effect of aestheticizing something? What does it mean to turn a culture into purely like images?
So the article has a lot to say about Scorpio Rising, or at least I took a lot of screenshots of what it says about Scorpio Rising.
Mm.
And one of the sections is the film's homoeroticized Hell's Angels motif is not the sole source of polysemy. Further, exegetic excess results from the swirl of pop signifiers, Lil Abner comic strips, children's toys, James Dean posters, Marlon Brando film clips, all backed by a soundtrack of contemporaneous rock songs. Sontag had located one of modern camp's enduring principles in its love of the old, whereby the
Mhm.
process of deterioration provides the necessary detachment or arouses the necessary sympathy. Failure in contemporary cultural artifacts, on the other hand, may make us indignant. Time can change that. Time liberates the work of art from moral relevance, delivering it over to camp sensibility. The
Mm.
delivery process apparently has been accelerated or evacuated altogether by postmodernism, which has turned indignation into indulgence. For it is precisely the immersion in the new and disposable pop culture that marks the passage from modern to postmodern camp.
Mm.
And in relation to like all the blending and juxtaposed imagery, it starts by like bringing up the Jesus footage, and it's from the B film The Road to Jerusalem, are juxtaposed with Scorpio and his gang engaged in quote unknowingly homosexual horseplay, gay slash straight, fanciful slash horrific, new slash recycled, sacred slash profane, all binary oppositions camped slash postmodernized into oblivion. Add
Mm.
swastikas to the mix as the biker's emblem, and morality appears to go up in smoke as well. Scorpio does die at the end in a motorbike crash, red lights flashing, to the dirge, wipe out, which another of the many bops
Yeah.
in this film. Yet such production code like quote punishment in the final reel fails to wipe the film's Nazi slate clean. As Dyer comments, the forces invoked by Scorpio Rising, sadism, male sexuality, immaturity, Nazism, are not ones widely approved of, but it is not at all clear that the film disapproves of them.
Yeah. I think that that's something that is like, if we're getting to like, if this is our finale to the season of cruelty, it's like, okay, how do we take, are we able to find enjoyment and desire in things that are awful and cruel? You know, we've talked about with Interview with the Vampire, like finding the humor of Lestat's abuse and like, you know, the racism and that Louis and Claudia experience, like, and but it's also entertaining. And then we talked about, you know, Bad Girls Go to Hell, this like dream slash like, is it a desire for all these awful acts of like rape to happen? And we're getting to this point of like, here is like Nazism, which is like, I think most people consider as kind of like the evilest of evil, and being like, there is something that is erotic about that. There is something that people, that there is, you can desire that imagery, at least maybe not the cruelty of it, but there is power in the image. And that is a truth about this world.
Yeah, and
You
I
can't.
think the context in which it's placed in this film also helps, because
Mm.
like it's kind of like it's made unserious, thus like not threatening, like through the music,
Mm.
and with like it being combined with like these classic 50s images,
Well, and the fact that it's
but like
so
that's also makes it more powerful.
yeah, but like the fact that it's homoerotic, where it's like, that is something, like, this is imagery that, okay, like, let me find the quote that Anger said, was that
And like the context and that surrounds the imagery is also points to it being satirical,
yeah.
which
So
also
okay,
kind of protects it from being like genuine, like quote unquote genuine Nazi imagery and like Nazism.
So, the quote from Anger about these like men that he was filming, and he's like bringing, like, he's like, oh, let me bring this flag out and let's see how they react. And he was like, oh yeah, they really liked it. And he was saying like, oh yeah, I don't know where those flags went after the filming of this film. I can't say that they stole them, but maybe they did. It was like, okay. But he had this quote saying that the
But it kind
bikers,
of supports the argument of the film that like all of this imagery of like the popular imagery of like all these like white guys, I also like idealized white guys, and this image of masculinity, it does lead to Nazism. It does
well,
lead to them being okay with
yeah.
the imagery.
Well, and so his quote was that they liked the raw power of the symbolism. He was like, I don't know. He's like, I can't say that they were Nazis, but they liked the raw power of the symbol of the swastika. And then I think about like, okay, so there are these figures and they're drawn to this imagery, but we're also seeing it constructed in this film by a queer gay director. And the way that these men are filmed
Yeah.
is erotic, and it is like there is something about the meaning of the image where it's like, okay, as an individual, maybe as these actors, these characters, they were drawn to these symbols, but then Anger as a director is like turning those men themselves into symbols and into like erotic symbols, which then feels in some ways like it's subverting, it's changing then the imagery, the Nazi imagery, because like, among the many people that the Nazis exterminated and, killed were gay people. And so then it feels like in some ways it's like we're holding the cruelty of what that image represents, but we're also like taking it back, and we're putting it within our own context and changing the meaning of that. We're making it sexy because you would have wanted it to be sexy because the Nazis obviously, like, they, all through all of their propaganda films and all these things, it was this like, yeah, this is great. We're like, but it's like it's making them desirable, but in a way that's like gay. It's like it's against it's not in the way that the Nazis themselves would have wanted them to be
It's
desirable.
in a non-approved way.
Yeah.
And I was gonna mention in like the comment from the channel that I watched Scorpio Rising on, and the channel is appropriately called Death Fetish. They
Mm.
point out when the film was screened at an art theater in Los Angeles, it was protested by the American Nazi Party on the basis that it insulted their flag. The police were
Hmm.
ultimately called to the site and arrested the theater manager for public obscenity and canceled the film's run. The case went to the California Supreme Court, where the case was settled in Anger's favor.
Hmm. It's
So, like, if the Nazis don't like it, we can like it.
yeah. Well, and then it's also like at the same time it's pairing this Nazi imagery, it's pairing this like film that literally shows Jesus. Like shows
But
Jesus on
it's
like,
also pairing Jesus with like gay vibes.
yeah.
Like as I said, it's image association galaxy brain.
It's very like I feel like we could have spend another
And just
3
like the
hours talk.
combination of like all this imagery with pop classics that are like arguably very innocuous and that anyone can listen to and that everyone likes.
Yeah, and then it completely changes the meaning
Yeah.
of these songs because it's like, oh, like I love you so much, I'll follow you to the end of the earth or whatever, and then it's like, oh, but I'm hearing that at the same time I'm seeing images of like
Of
Nazis going
Jesus
to
and the
war.
swastika.
Yeah. Weird. And like the fact that it's like I don't know, there's just something to the fact where it's like, if the story is true and someone did actually die in a accident at the end of the film, where it's like we're seeing throughout these films these like images of death, like there's this like one, the first biker guy who's repairing his motorbike, like there's like a skull Grim Reaper thing behind him, and then there's like the main kind of guy Scorpio, he's like putting on these skull rings, and like it's it's doing in this way that's kind of sexual, it's sexy, and it's like, oh, I'm like feeling like, ooh, it's kind of, I don't know, there's something thrilling, there's something kind of erotic about danger and potential harm, but then it's like, oh, then we actually see that harm, we actually see that pain. It's like,
But like we're also still stuck in the vibes
yeah, so
of
it's
the
like,
film. Like the vibes of this film are immaculate. Like you just let them wash over you, but it's also like, wait,
so it's like,
yeah.
should I feel
And I feel
guilty for
like
enjoying that?
that's
Should
what makes
I?
it so good.
Yeah,
That's just makes it so good.
it's
Like it's magic. It is real
mm,
magic.
yeah. I mean, if alchemy is changing one thing into another, like that's what
Camp
he
is
does with,
magic.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's also like very non-magic system magic.
Mm, one of my I feel like we should say like some of our favorite images from this film. I mean, we
Yeah.
could also say our favorite images from all the films we watched, but I was just looking through my notes, and I was reminded I really like the moment where the kind of main character Scorpio, he like, it's one of those like, strike anywhere matches, and he's like trying to light his cigarette, and he strikes the match on his own lip,
Mm.
and it's just, it feels very like, I don't know, that's a little bit of that masochistic energy of like, he's like, oh, a tough guy, and enjoying the pain, he's striking the match on his own lip. I don't know, I liked that image.
I liked when he was putting on his cuffs and the rings
Mm.
and the boots.
You know what I said
I
about
liked his
that?
cat.
Yeah. Oh, in the commentary, Anger said it. He's like, be grateful you can't smell the place. He's like, it's just smelled like a bunch of cats. And he like starts also talking about like owning a bunch of cats as a sickness. He's like, I'm a dog person. But I was gonna say, like, there was
There's
what I
also
wrote.
all the stuff in that church. Because like they do
Yeah,
eventually go to like a church at night, which
yeah.
like again it very much invites the comparison of Christianity and Catholicism to Nazism.
Mm-hmm. Well, okay, going back to like the putting on like the like cuffs and stuff, like there was something like I wrote down that all of like the dressing in the clothing of like a biker felt like a ritual to me. There was something about it
Yeah.
being filmed. It felt very like
In a way it
ceremonial.
felt like a kind of return to Puce moment. This is like
Yeah.
Guy Puce moment.
Yeah. It's like the other end. It's like pure femininity, wealth, opulence,
Pretty
glitter,
colors.
masculinity, death, destruction, Nazis. Yeah. Oh God, there was I also, looking at my notes, I forgot about the noose that was hanging in the
Oh yeah.
background. Oh yeah, and then
Also the iconic jacket that says the title
yeah.
of the film. A lot of Kenneth Anger's works have like practical titles and credits on them.
Mm.
I love the
Um
belt that says "end."
yeah. There was also apparently, again, according to this commentary, so who knows if Anchor was telling the truth, but the drugs that get snorted
Yeah.
was real methamphetamines.
Mm.
And so then when they went to the church later, that was supposedly the idea that the actor had while high. He's like, let's go to this church. And I guess like when they're in the church, he's like peeing in a
Yeah,
helmet.
in like a Nazi helmet
Yeah.
in a
And so
church.
it's like, is the again, like we were talking about the mouse heaven is like, is this reverence or is this hate? It's really hard. It's like, is
And
it
like that's what
both?
makes it really camp, how it's like holding these two ideas at the same time
Yeah.
and also doing a lot of juxtaposition and like specifically with imagery. And then you add the pop culture of it all with the songs.
Well, and then you also, if you add in the layer too of like the story is that these were these real guys that Anger was just filming, where it's like, okay, how much of this is staged? How much of this is real? How much of this is it, real people, but they are acting because they know that they are being filmed?
Yeah.
And it reminds me, I wrote down one of the quotes I wrote down from Fascinating Fascism uh, was Sontag, but it's also Sontag quoting someone else. Quote, between sadomasochism and fascism, there is a natural link. Fascism is theater, as Gent said. Um, and then back to Sontag, as is sadomasochistic sexuality. To be involved in sadomasochism is to take part of it in a sexual theater, a staging of sexuality, which the film feels like this like party that these bikers are having feels like, I mean, it's not an orgy, but like it
They
feels,
feel very gay with each other.
yeah. And it's also like, I mean, so there's like they like are rubbing mustard on this like guy's nether regions
It
is
was
one
like
way to
on
say
his
it.
stomach, like
Yeah,
his
well,
lower stomach.
according to Anger, it was on his testicles. Um,
Well, we didn't see that.
but it's the song is that's playing is torture,
Yeah,
and they're like holding him down.
yeah.
It's very,
It's it's a vibe. Again, a lot of this film is just a very specific vibe.
and but like again, if fascism is pageantry, it's theater, it's like constructing an image and playing within it, so is this kind of sadomasochistic sexuality.
Yeah, a lot of this film is very much a subversion of fascist aesthetics,
But it's also at the
like
same time,
using them in
it's,
the way that fascists wouldn't want them to be used.
but also at the same time, it's kind of a replication of fascist.
Yeah,
Because like as Sontag says, fascist art glorifies surrender, it exalts mindlessness, it glamorizes death. What would you call the end of this film?
yeah. But that's also what makes it so good because it's kind of proving that like all of this is still possible to make in film. And
Yeah.
like it the point is that like it's showing you all this images and in a way it's questioning the imagery, but it's also like making you question yourself as to like why is this film such a vibe? And like what does
Yeah.
that say?
Yeah. I mean,
It's magic.
I think, when we were talking about Peeping Tom at the very top of this film that we
Yeah.
watched, and to me that was an example of a film that shows you something and it doesn't feel like it judges the audience for taking pleasure in what it shows you. And I think that, I don't know, I Scorpio Rising is another example of that. I feel like it's like showing you these images and it's like, how do you feel about it? I'm not going to judge you for feeling a certain way about it.
Yeah, there's just too many layers in Scorpio Rising. Like it's kind of breaking my brain.
Yeah. I mean, I see why you put it on your like you've put it on so many of your lists because it's like holy shit, you can do that?
Yeah. The JSTOR article, like to quote how it describes it, it says it's a 28-minute satire of and homage to the biker scene, based partly on gay porn magazines of the period. Scorpio Rising also signals a shift from modern to postmodern camp. And
Hmm.
like I feel like the postmodernism is like with all the layers
Mm-hmm.
and like extracting meaning from like consumerist items.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's another thing that's kind of maybe unspoken about Scorpio Rising is like all of that, all of the imagery, it took money to do. It took labor that then that the earnings of that was spent. You know, the repairing, the putting together of the motorcycle. That's not they didn't just have those parts lying around. That was work that they had to put into making those bikes and like oh, reading the comics and things like
And like with the comics, I feel like it's really interesting how like some of this the I'm blanking on the word for the panels. Some of them
mm,
were about like the characters talking about like why why did we hate you, or like
mm,
it was a long, it started a long time ago. It's something like that, but it was very much pointedly about like hatred, and like specifically hatred of other people for their differences or for being marginalized groups. And like
mm-hmm.
to me it also, it feels like a layer to the film of how like these guys are reading that, but it's kind of washing over them and they're like not really engaging with what they're reading and are being fans of.
Yeah. You know what I was gonna say if we're talking about the comics, and also like we referenced it already, but like the playing with the wind up toys and with that song that pairs with it is it. I was fascinated by these like images of childhood and like innocence. It almost makes it feel like these characters of these bikers that we're following, even if then later they're engaging with this violence, there's also something like I don't know, still I mean they're still human. They were still kids once and they still have like you know, enjoyment in these things of childhood and I think that they're you know, I go either way about whether it's like should we humanize Nazis or not because it's like if there's someone
Because
who's an
like
actual
to
Nazi, it's
to me there was also a layer of like this kind of imagery, like these people are familiar with them since they're kids, and
mm-hmm.
so they like don't really question this imagery or anything because it's what they know
Mm-hmm.
and like
Mm-hmm.
what we've made them only know.
Mm, yeah. I mean, the nature of this of Scorpio Rising is that I feel like you could talk about it and write about it for hours and come up with a new meaning each time.
Yeah, and it's all just imagery, like specifically like pop culture imagery, but it pop culture imagery can break your brain.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what camp does.
Yeah.
It's kind of about torturing your brain regarding pretty pictures or not so pretty pictures.
Do you think do you have a final say on what you take away from Scorpio Rising? Because that could also transition to us into us talking about what our major takeaways from this whole season have been.
Scorpio Rising is definitely one of my favorite short films, and also possibly one of the most important films ever.
Yeah?
Possibly. Like something about it feels monumental
Yeah.
for being such a short film.
Yeah. Yeah, I think to me, my biggest takeaway is the intentionality of the edit. And to break that apart, I mean, like, I am someone who, like, in my own work has and then in the way I also critique other people's work is that I'm like, I I care less about what you end up exploring as long as you're doing it with thoughtfulness and intention. Like if you're like, I am putting this idea in here because I'm intentionally trying to explore it, that I'm going to respect that. Um and to me, I don't know, watching Scorpio Rising made me realize like, oh, you can go you can go to like the furthest extreme of being like, I am going to show Hitler, I am going to show swastikas. If you're doing it intentionally, if you're making meaning out of that image because you're pairing it with other images, and that's kind of scary almost. It's like, oh wow, that's a lot of power. But it's also really exciting to me because it feels very like, I don't know, it feels really daring, and it feels like watching this film made me go like, okay, if I have a legitimate reason, if I can justify why I'm exploring a really dark theme, I can go there. That's what I felt like I took away from Scorpio Rising.
Yeah, it does something that a lot of the best camp does, which is it just hits you in the face in very many different ways.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if this is the most controversial film that we've discussed on the show, not in the sense of we've actually been like the people discussing it are very like divided in how we're discussing, because I think that's divinity. That award will go to
Yeah.
divinity. But like in the sense of like the actual images that are on screen, Scorpio Rising's pretty intense.
Yeah, it's a crazy movie. And that's what makes it so interesting and fun and camp and effective.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I've just been like in this loop just talking about it because it's just kind of an undescribable film.
Yeah.
You just have to experience it.
Yeah. Oh gosh, highly recommend it to any of our, well, maybe not all of our listeners, uh, in the sense that
Yeah.
like, don't just watch it on a, oh, I'm just gonna watch something, I'm just gonna set aside, I'm just gonna pop it on, like, but I'd
You can
recommend
pop
it.
up the soundtrack.
Yeah. But if you're ready, I think like if you're ready to like sit with something, I recommend it a lot. Gosh, I mean, if we're gonna talk about takeaways from this season, dare I say, like, best season yet? I mean, I love episodes we've, like, all of our episodes, but this was a really good season. I feel like we've really, really, like, hit our stride in terms of, like, feeling really confident in the way we're talking about things.
Yeah. Which is weird because I feel like this is like the least confident season I've been in. Because like after
Really?
every episode, I was like, I just said a bunch of nonsense.
No, I disagree. I mean, I will say there are some episodes this season that I've legitimately gone back and re-listened to. Um,
That's a good sign.
Mostly our interview with the vampire episode, because here's a little secret about me. Every time I get really emotional thinking about how good Interview with the Vampire is, I go back and listen to our Interview with the Vampire episode, because I'm like, damn, we just talk about how good this show is, and we're really good at talking about how good this show is. And I've
I
listened
feel
to
like
it.
I'm gonna re-listen to the House of the Dragon episode
Oh, I can't wait till that comes out.
in a couple of days.
I know.
Our
Well, it's
time
already
of
out.
recording.
It's already out for people who are listening to
Yeah.
this. But gosh, our Fascination episode, our Divinity episode, our Evil Dead episode, a great
Bad Girls Go
guests.
to Hell was like an important episode to me.
Yeah.
We'll not be
Really.
re-listening.
I re-listened to it to put it to make the YouTube video, and it was really good. It was a good
Yeah.
episode. I also liked our Doom Generation episode a lot. Um, I'm glad you got to watch
Yeah.
some Greg Araki finally.
We covered Showgirls,
Oh my God.
which it would have been a crime if we never got around to Showgirls.
We
I feel like
covered.
next season could be a lot of classics.
What do
Like
you
it's
mean we covered classics this season? We covered
yeah, but
Death
like
Becomes Her and Whatever Happened to Baby
yeah, but like
Jane.
there's even more classics that are like we have to cover them.
I think we should cover some. There's some. I don't know of films that I am dying to cover, but there's certain directors where I'm like, it's a crime we haven't covered them yet. Um,
Yeah.
I'll say there if we're because we were talking about like kind of all-time favorites at the top of this episode. Two of my all-time favorites we did cover this season, which was Showgirls and But I'm a Cheerleader. Those are two films that I have ranked 5 stars on Letterboxd, and they are kind of polar opposites, but still both
Yeah.
incredibly camp. Showgirls and But I'm a Cheerleader, not in my top 4 on Letterboxd, but like films that are 100% my taste. And I can't wait to subject more people to Showgirls now that I own the DVD of it, because you showed it to me and I felt like I was losing my mind, and now I love it. So I'm going to force that experience on more people. I mean, I say force. Obviously, it'll be consensual. Everyone will
Yeah.
want to
But
watch it.
like whenever you're watching something with a friend, it feels like you're forcing them to.
Yeah. Well, you did that with Nosferatu to me.
Yeah.
um, do you think I wonder we get I mean we were horny this season. I wonder if season 4 we could get even hornier.
I that is such an insane thing to like say and potentially clip out of context. We were so horny this season.
But I mean, am I wrong?
No. I mean like the films were.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, now I'm remembering the fact that my mom sometimes listens to this show. I am look, tequila is strong. Margaritas are a strong drink.
We were still able to have a relatively coherent conversation.
Yeah, I do feel like at some point I was that meme of the guy who's like brain is like exploding. Just like movies. It's
But
like
like that's kind of what the podcast is about. It's about movies.
I know, movies and TV.
Yeah.
We talked about some good TV shows this. Well, we talked about some interesting. I still don't know if South Park's good, but we talked about some interesting TV shows this season.
Yeah.
And next season, I want to discuss Hannibal.
Yeah. I want to discuss the Borgias next season.
Hell yeah. And then we should throw the Muppets in there at some point too, because
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Muppets.
Yeah. Again, it falls under the umbrella of classics we have to cover. The
Yeah.
Muppet Show.
What's a classic that you think we haven't covered yet that we need to?
Wizard of Oz.
We covered The Wiz. I guess it's different. It's a different kind
It's
of camp.
different. It's different.
Yeah. I would like to ask
Faster Pussycat.
Yes, please. And that was going to say one of the directors we need to cover next season
Yeah.
in some way. We need to cover Russ Meyer, because how have we not covered a Russ Meyer? But Scarecrow has
We need
on
to
their...
do more musicals.
Yeah. You know what I was looking at? I think we've only covered one musical. No, two. We've covered
We did
two.
the Pirate. And...
We did The Pirate and The Wiz. And that's
Yeah.
the only musicals we've covered. Which is crazy. How have we not covered more musicals? Musicals are like so camp.
Yeah.
But I was gonna say, to our dear listeners, in the comments, and I'll also leave in the show notes a form that you can fill out on our social media posts. please, please, please tell us films you would like us to cover. Films that you think it is criminal we've not covered yet. And we will work that into our season 4 schedule because we love the suggestions. And hey, to our guests, all of our guests that have come on this season, we love you. Thank you so much for talking with us. If you want to come back, if there are listeners who
this was our season with the most guests. This
I
was
know.
also the guest season.
I love that. I think our next season I mean, obviously depending on availability and interest, but like I loved getting to talk to so many guests. I loved getting to like every time someone has like a kind of a history with a film, I love that because so many of these films I'm watching for the first time, and it's really fun to hear from someone who's like, I watched this when I was a kid, you know. Maybe I'm just thinking about, you know, Dominic and the Evil Dead, but yeah. Spy Kids last season.
Yeah.
That was another fun episode. So let's pitch things that you think are very camp, and then that obviously like someone would be like, yeah, obviously that's camp. I also want more advanced camp texts, as Nicole said when we did Center Jenny. Like let's get in some things that are real out
Kenneth
there.
Anger is like advanced camp. Like both in the sense that it's experimental film, but it is also like one of the birthplaces of camp and film.
That's true.
Is Kenneth Anger.
I guess that shows how knowledgeable we are with camp now. That I was like, this feels like a walk in the park. This is classic camp. I can do this. But yeah, no, you're right that it is a lot. It is, as a film, it's experimental as hell, and it's not someone's go-to first watch.
And also Mouse Heaven is also like that. It's just a 10-minute onslaught of creepy Mickey Mouse things.
Yeah.
I will say my favorite Mickey Mouse was the tattoo.
Yeah. I think I liked the well, did I like it? I don't know. The mouse that I had the most respect for was the one that smiled, even though it unnerved me deep in my soul. Well, is that our season?
Yeah, I think so. I think the phrase "the mouse that smiled but it unnerved me deep in my soul" is a great ending point for the whole season.
We did it! I have been your co-host, Saffron Hefta-Gaub. You can follow me online everywhere at Gaub Hefta.
And I've been your other co-host, Fabiola. You can find me on Instagram at Fabi0LAHH and on Twitter at Fabiola_Liaño.
Our theme song that you're bobbing your head to right now is by Harrison Lurie.
Give us a rating on Spotify and a review on Apple.
Thank you to our patrons, Nicole Veneto, Jose Liano, and Pericles Sparrow. Please check our episode description for additional links and citations.
Thank you so much.